The other day, I was sitting in the waiting room at Dr. Miller's office, reading one of those old fishing magazines, when I overheard a man my age say to the nurse, "I'm fine, just fine." He had his cane leaning on the chair. His hands were shaking just a bit, and I could tell he'd been walking slower than molasses. But in that moment, he brushed it all off, like it didn't matter. That scene stuck with me. See, there's an ugly truth that most folks don't talk about. If you don't tell your doctor the right things, you might walk out with the wrong treatment. It's not that the doctor doesn't care. It's that they can only work with what you say. And many of us older diabetics, whether out of pride, fear, or just plain habit, keep the hard stuff to ourselves. We smile, we nod, we say, "I'm doing all right," even when our feet burn at night or our sugar drops so low we see stars. I thank the Lord for every day I get to wake up, pour my coffee, and see the sunrise. But I've learned something the hard way. The words you speak in that exam room can be just as powerful as the medicine in your cabinet. You might think, well, the doctor already knows what I'm feeling. No, they don't, not unless you say it. Medicine is a mind reading. It's a partnership. And if your half of the story is missing, the whole picture is broken. That's why today, I want to share a few stories, some tough, some hopeful, that show how the way we talk to our doctor can either save us or set us back. Because hiding the truth doesn't protect us. It puts us in danger. If this message hits home, share it with someone you love. It might just save a life. I remember back when my daddy used to fix old tractors. He'd say, "Son, you can't fix what you don't know is broken." Well, medicine's the same way. Doctors aren't wizards. They can't just wave a wand and see every problem inside us. They rely on what we say, the details, the little clues, to figure out what's going on. And yet, so many older folks with diabetes walk into that office and sugarcoat the truth, thinking they're helping the doctor by not complaining. What they're really doing is making it harder for the doctor to help. In small towns like ours, we were raised to be polite, to keep our troubles to ourselves, and say we're fine even when we're not. That might work at the grocery store checkout, but it doesn't belong in the exam room. If you tell your doctor you're doing well, they'll assume your treatment is working just fine. They'll keep you on the same medicines, the same doses, and you'll walk out thinking you've avoided more pills, when in truth, you might have walked into more trouble. The truth is, vague answers like, "Sometimes I feel tired," or "My sugar's okay," are dangerous. Your doctor doesn't know if tired means you get winded after mowing the lawn, or if you nearly fainted in the kitchen last week. They don't know if sugar's okay means you've been steady at 110 or spiking over 250 after dinner. Those are two completely different problems, and they need completely different solutions. Some of us think, well, my doctor can see my lab results. They already know. But labs are like snapshots. They show a moment in time. They don't show the restless nights, the tingling in your toes, or the dizzy spells that happen in between visits. Only your words can paint that picture. And without that picture, your treatment is a guessing game. I've come to believe that holding back the truth in that little exam room is like leaving a loose bolt in your tractor engine. You might not see the damage right away, but sooner or later, it'll bring the whole thing to a stop. And thank the Lord, it's one thing we can fix ourselves by speaking up. I've got a few real stories to share, moments I've seen or heard from folks like us, that show how a simple choice of words at the doctor's office can change everything. The first one is about Mary, a sweet lady from church, 72 years old, with a smile that could light up a Sunday potluck. She's been living with diabetes for years, and she's the kind who never wants to trouble anyone. For months, she'd been waking up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, heart pounding, hands shaking. Her sugar would crash so low, she could barely make it to the kitchen for a sip of orange juice. But she never mentioned it to her doctor, thinking, it's just part of getting older. When her appointment came, she gave the usual polite answers, blood pressure, weight, "I'm fine." She figured those nighttime scares weren't worth mentioning. But each of those episodes was like a warning flare in the dark, and by keeping silent, she was letting danger stay hidden. Without that detail, her doctor had no reason to change her medication. In fact, he thought her slightly high A1C meant she might need more medication, exactly the opposite of what her body needed. That meant even more risk of those midnight crashes, and one night, she might not wake up in time. It wasn't until she casually mentioned it to a friend over coffee that someone said, "Mary, that's not normal. Tell your doctor now." She did, and the doctor was shocked. He cut back her medication right away, and within days, the midnight shakes disappeared. Mary told me later, with tears in her eyes, "I thank God I spoke up before it was too late." And I couldn't help but think, how many of us are keeping quiet about something that could cost us dearly? It's funny how those two little words, "I'm fine," can be both polite and dangerous. I know a fellow named George, 68, who used them every single time he saw his doctor. George's thinking was simple. If he said he wasn't fine, the doctor might hand him more pills, and he sure didn't want that. So, for years, his answers were short, upbeat, and just vague enough to keep questions away. What he didn't mention was a tingling in his feet that had started one summer and slowly crept up his legs. He ignored the way his toes felt numb on cold mornings, or the fact that his balance wasn't what it used to be. Those were just old age things in his mind, nothing worth talking about. The problem was, they weren't old age things. They were early signs of diabetic neuropathy. And because George kept saying he was fine, his doctor thought all was well and kept his treatment exactly the same. By the time the truth came out, the nerve damage had progressed enough that walking barefoot on his porch felt like stepping on pins. I remember him telling me, if I'd said something back then, maybe I'd still be able to dance with my wife without worrying about my balance. It was one of those moments when the smile leaves your face, and you realize how high the cost of silence can be. George says now he's learned his lesson. "I'm fine" belongs at the church coffee table, not in the exam room. And I think he's right. My neighbor, Ruth, is the kind of woman who shows up to every church supper with her famous peach cobbler and a notepad in her purse. One day, she told me her little trick for doctor visits. Before each appointment, she writes down every symptom, no matter how small, along with questions she wants answered. She even notes the time of day they happen: dizzy after breakfast, legs ache at night, blurred vision when reading the Bible. When Ruth's blood sugar started acting up last year, she didn't just shrug it off or try to remember things on the spot. She walked into her appointment with that notepad in hand and told the doctor, "Here's what's been happening." It wasn't a long speech, just clear, specific details. The doctor was able to connect the dots quickly, realizing her medication dose was too high for her new diet and activity level. Within a week of adjusting her treatment, Ruth felt better. No more afternoon crashes. No more waking up shaky. She told me it was like someone had opened a window and let the fresh air in. Her energy came back, and so did her confidence. What struck me most was that she didn't have to become a medical expert or use fancy terms. She just told the truth in a way that was easy to understand. The result? She avoided months, maybe years, of unnecessary suffering. As Ruth likes to say, God gave us a voice, and it's meant to be used, especially when it comes to our health. Here's practical guidance. Back when I was a kid, my mama kept a little spiral notebook on top of the fridge where she'd jot down everything from the weather to what we had for supper. That same idea works wonders for doctor visits. Start keeping a small notebook or even just a folded piece of paper in your pocket to write down what's been happening with your body. Don't just say, "I felt dizzy," right? "I felt dizzy after walking the mailbox around 2 p.m. 2 times this week." That's the kind of detail that helps your doctor see the full picture. Another thing, bring a complete list of all the medicines you take. And I don't just mean the prescriptions. Include vitamins, herbal teas, over-the-counter pills, even that cinnamon you sprinkle in your coffee every morning because your neighbor swears it helps. Doctors need to know it all, because some things can mix in ways that cause trouble. When you describe your symptoms, be specific. Instead of "I'm tired," you might say, "By the time I finish washing the breakfast dishes, I need to sit down for 10 minutes. Instead of "My sugar's been high," say, "It's been over 200 most mornings before breakfast." That's the difference between a guess and a plan. And don't forget the little changes. They can be big clues. If your socks leave deeper marks on your ankles than before, your shoes feel tighter, your vision blurs at certain times, or you've been waking up more at night, Those are all worth mentioning. They might seem small, but they can point to problems your doctor can fix before they get worse. Think of your appointment like telling a story. Start at the beginning, add the important details, and make sure the ending is clear. The more you share, the more your doctor can help. And thank the Lord, that's one thing we can control. I've lived long enough to know that speaking up isn't always easy. We're taught to be tough, to keep our troubles to ourselves, and to avoid making a fuss. But when it comes to our health, especially with diabetes, keeping quiet can cost more than we're willing to pay. The truth might feel uncomfortable in the moment, but it's the only way your doctor can fight the right battles for you. Think of it this way. If you were out fishing and saw your boat taking on water, you wouldn't just sit there and hope the captain notices. You'd shout, you'd point, you'd make sure he knew. In the exam room, you are the lookout. If you don't call out the trouble, no one else will. I've seen folks who change their whole path just by speaking plainly. No medical degree, no fancy words, just honesty. That's what saved Mary from dangerous nighttime crashes. What could have helped George sooner, and what kept Ruth feeling strong and steady? It's not luck. It's the power of telling the truth. So before your next appointment, ask yourself, what's really been going on with my body? What's changed? And am I ready to speak it out loud? Because your words aren't complaints. They're instructions for your own rescue. Your life, your health, and the days you get to spend with the people you love. They're worth every honest word you can give. Take care of yourselves, and God bless y'all.